Hello, I'm Agatha Thrash, a staff physician from Uchee Pines Institute and very interested in foods. We're going to be talking about some foods that will help you to be in the very best of health and to ward off the aging process as much as it's possible for you to do in the surroundings of your life, having to do with your genetics and the accidents that you've had and the lifestyle that you keep. And so we hope that by presenting this, you will be much blessed. And so we hope you'll join us.
The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented. Welcome to Help Yourself to Health with Dr. Agatha Thrash of Uchee Pines Institute. And now, here's your host, Dr. Thrash.
Nutritionists and physical therapists and physical trainers, coaches, and people who teach physical education in high schools and colleges are all talking about how we can avoid the aging process. And of course, some of the ways that we age includes our muscles, our skin. That's of course something that we are very accustomed to seeing, the wrinkling, the graying. Those things we see quite a lot, and we're accustomed to seeing those. But then there are some things like brain aging, heart aging. We aren't accustomed to seeing those. We don't see the wrinkles on the heart. We don't see the graying that might occur in the brain. We don't see these kinds of things, and so we tend to think that these organs are free from the aging process. And since they tend to work pretty well, no matter what kind of lifestyle we have, except maybe if we lose sleep or if we get overtired, then we know that these organs aren't functioning well. But otherwise, we tend to think that they are merrily going on their way, being healthy, no matter what we do. But that just isn't the case. The way we eat, the way we exercise, the regularity we have, even cleanliness and orderliness in our surroundings, all of these things tend to affect us and encourage the way that we age. And so we'd like to talk with you about some things having to do with foods first, and then we'll talk about some other things having to do with the aging process. So I have with me today Lidia Seda, who is going to help me talk with you about foods, and I am so glad that you came here because you brought this nice dish with you, and I want to hear about it. What do you have here?
Well, basically this is what's called a haystack, or some of you may know it as a taco salad. It has corn chips and beans and a salsa, guacamole, and a sour cream dip as well. The nice thing about all these ingredients is that they're fat-free, have fiber, and also one important thing that can help against aging is melatonin. Melatonin actually is a powerful antioxidant, and what they have done in experiments with mice, they have taken two different groups of mice, they have placed them under very stressful situations, they have injected them with some very dangerous viruses, but one group they injected with melatonin and one group they did not. What they found after 30 days was that the group that had not been injected with the melatonin, 92% of them died, and only 16% of the group that had been injected with melatonin died. So we can see that melatonin guards against not only aging, but actually helps to guard the health and keep us healthy.
Now, two things about this dish I want to ask you about. First, you said it was fat-free. You mean no free fats?
Exactly,
in this.
exactly.
Because I can see these corn chips. They are baked.
Those were baked.
They're not fried.
Exactly.
But corn has oil in it.
That's true.
That's good, and it's a good oil. I like the corn oil. That's a good oil for humans. And then I see a layer of beans. Is that what you put on there?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Beans have a nice oil in them. Oh, that's good too. And then I see the guacamole. Guacamole is made from avocados, and that has some delightful fats in it.
Exactly.
They taste good, and And of course, they're very good quality, good for the human being. And then what kind of dressing is this on top?
And that's a sour soy cream.
Sour soy cream, okay? So soy also has some fat in it unless it has been defatted. Now, you know, there are tomatoes and there are some peppers, and even they have a little fat in them. It's not very much.
Even lettuce has some fat in it.
Has some fat,
Yes,
and apples have a little fat. So we can't get away from fat. Though there's probably not much of a diet called a fat-free diet. But when a nutritionist says a fat-free diet, it means they just haven't added any.
Exactly. There are no oils in this. Not even olive oil has been placed in this, because those fats are concentrated fats. Corn oil, olive oil, even though they're vegetable-based, it's still a concentrated oil. Even though overall they're healthier than, let's say, lard, which is a saturated type of fat.
Yes, we certainly would want to stay away from lard. It's most unhelpful. Now, you mentioned melatonin, and melatonin in foods is maybe a new idea. So we know that melatonin is a little bit in corn,
tomatoes.
And in tomatoes. It's a good bit in tomatoes.
And there's something here that it has that we don't have actually in this recipe, but oats are very high in melatonin.
Yes. What other foods are high in melatonin?
All the grains are also high in melatonin as well, especially barley. It's one of the ones highest as well. And something else I would like to share with our audience is on flavonoids. Flavonoids which are high in grapes. And many individuals think that when they drink wine and they get some of the benefits from wine, that they're getting it because of the wine, because it's a fermented product. Actually, the benefits they're getting are from the grapes. They have the flavonoids. They are potent antioxidants, even more so than even vitamin E. So, Dr. Agatha, so when individuals drink wine, the wine is not going to keep them youthful. Actually, the alcohol, the fermented product, can actually deter the certain organs from working as well as they can, but the grapes can actually work against free radical formation.
Now, I would rather have my grapes in the fresh form like I had them this morning for breakfast. And I can tell you also that grape juice is a great improvement over wine. And it has so many things in it that can be beneficial to the body and can protect it. Now, Lidia, if I wanted to get recipes for this, is there a recipe that you have for it?
Well, if anyone's interested, what we like you to do is to go to your computer and go online, www.3abn.org, press links, and go to Uchee Pines, U-C-H-E-E, and then the word Pines, and you'll be able to get these recipes.
Well, that sounds very encouraging, and I'm very happy that I can do that. Now, we age in different ways, and I'd like to show you something here that I think can be helpful to us to capture the importance that we can see in being very careful about the food that we eat. I'd like to show you here a section of a human brain. This comes from my museum, and and I have these glass rods so that I can hold it better without having to touch it because it's been fixed in formalin. And so I'd like to show you just the gray matter, which you can easily see here on the edge. That's the gray matter. And then the white matter is that's on the interior, that's a little lighter color. It's not actually white, although in the fresh brain it looks a lot more white than it does here. And the gray part looks a lot more tan than it does here. But the fixing process sort of makes the colors blend a little bit more. But you can see in this section that the gray matter is where we do the thinking part. We make all of our decisions here. In order for the brain to be able to function, it must get excellent nutrients. Now, we may think, well, the brain principally runs on glucose, and that's true, it does. But in order to get a full complement of everything that the brain needs in order to continue to be healthy, the body generally must be healthy. because the brain is simply an organ of the body. And if the heart is unhealthy, then the brain is not going to be as healthy as it could be. If the intestinal tract is unhappy and unhealthy, you can be sure it's going to make an unhappy and an unhealthy brain. If the brain is not healthy and happy, then the thoughts are not going to be good. And it is the thought that is the product of the brain. So always we need to be keeping in mind that the diet, our lifestyle, all of this needs to be of such a nature that it can keep us in the best of health. Now, one thing that a lot of Americans pay little attention to is that of the fats that they eat and the rancidity of them. As Lidia showed you in the food that she showed to you there, that you can have a diet that does not have rancid fats in it for the most part, although grains can become rancid even on your shelf or even in the grocer's shelf. So you need to be careful about grains that they are fresh, they haven't been stored for years, and that they don't have rancidity already. And maybe I could have Don Miller to talk with you some things about the antioxidant process and the rancidity process.
Well, let me ask you a question first, Dr. Thrash. How do you know if a fat's rancid?
Well, there are several ways. One way, you can smell of it.
Yeah.
Another way is you can ask how old it is. If the grocer says, well, this is a common item that I have, I keep it here all the time, and you look at the package and it looks as if it's old, that may tell you something. If you have had it in your own house and it's been not under refrigeration, then you can be pretty, and it's ground, you can be pretty certain that it's rancid. If it's, say it's 6 months or a year old and it hasn't been, you can know that it's rancid, like flour or nut meals. I'm not very happy with nut meals. They're very inexpensive, but I wonder if they're not expensive in the long run, because by the time we get them, they may be rancid already, which means that they're not going to be good for us. Now, one thing that I do when I'm at the store, if I'm going to buy something and I'm unclear about whether it's rancid or not, I go ahead and pay for it. Then I just open the package and I sniff.
Yeah.
And if it is rancid, I just take it back to the cashier and I say, dear, this is rancid. I just bought it from you. Here it is on my ticket. I either want a refund or I want to exchange it for something that's not rancid.
Yeah.
That saves me a trip back. And if I take it home and I put it on my shelf, there's a greater likelihood that I will serve that than if I deal with it there in the store, because to take it back a day or so later, it's another trip to the store.
That's right. And we frugal types don't want to throw things out, do we?
No, we don't like throwing things out. So that's a good point.
Not only don't we want to throw things out, but I'm the type that doesn't want to take it back either. And so you're stuck in that dilemma. And I have often opened up a bag. If you're buying a processed food, and if you look in the ingredients, it has some type of fat in it, there's a good chance that it may well be rancid. And one sniff will tell you. Now, there's a good clue to tell you if something's been heated, because there's a couple of ways of making your fats very bad for you, basically turning it from a cis fat into a trans fat. Now, those are interesting sounding words. Basically, all that means is the alignment of the hydrogen molecule to the carbon molecule. And you know if it's been heated, basically if it's been fried food. Fried foods are all heated fats, and many times you don't know. Matter of fact, the oils that you buy in the store for the most part have been heated, and they go through a horrendous process of refining. They go through caustic things. Matter of fact, they go through one product in their refining process, which is equivalent to what we use, what we call Drano in the drain. They add it to the oil, and then they take it back out of the oil to try to keep it, to get a longer shelf life, because that's the name of the game, not health, but shelf. We want a longer shelf life, and quite frankly, I want a longer health life, and so I would like to stay away from these particular products, and so we try to stay away from things that have fat already added to them. The good fats are things like flaxseed oil and walnuts are very good forms of fat. Now, Dr. Thrash talked about nuts, and getting nut meal How long ago was that nut ground up and made into a meal before you have it on your shelf? And I often find if I eat nuts that have been taken out of the shelf, because see, God knew all about these fats things. God is not surprised, Dr. Thrash, about nuts. And so how does he package them? He packages them in an airtight, light-tight container.
So we don't want cracked nuts then.
Don't want cracked nuts. I often, you go to the store and you spend all that money for cashews or walnuts, and you take that first bite and you say, it doesn't taste right, and it's rancid. And it takes a lot of inside of me to dump them out because nuts are very expensive nowadays. God realized that a nut was a concentrated nutrient. He realized that the fat inside the nut was quite necessary for us, but he put them inside of a shell. And like I've just said, the shell is airtight and it's light tight. And there's three enemies to fats. One is light, one is air, and one is heat. And as soon as we separate oil from its constituent coating, it's exposed to the light and it's exposed to oxygen. You can take an ear of corn and squeeze it all day long. You will not squeeze oil out of there. But once you have extracted the oil, usually through a high-speed auger system, from the corn, it's exposed immediately to air, it's exposed immediately to light, and at that point it starts to become rancid. And so really the best thing to do is start moving away from using fats. Visible fats, the bottled fats. And if you're going to buy bottled fats, get it in the dark bottles, these clear glass bottles, and you let them sit there on your counter being exposed to the light. Now what they do to keep those from going rancid is they hydrogenate these things. They infuse it with hydrogen, which then makes it even worse for our bodies. Look at statistics. Today, nearly 1/2 of people in this country, Dr. Thrash, die of a coronary vessel disease, some type of coronary
big killer.
Big killer. 1900, 1 in 7. There's been a big difference. Nowadays we have a lot of cancer. Basically, almost 1/3 of people will die of cancer. Go back to 1900, 1 in 30 were dying of cancer. We have seen that the exposure to these altered fats, these hydrogenated fats, these trans fats, increase cancer and increase coronary artery disease and atherosclerosis. Basically what happens when we take in a trans fat, an altered fat, it raises the cholesterol in the blood. And if we're eating a cholesterol diet, then it raises it even more. Even a vegetarian diet will raise it 15%, somehow stimulating our liver to produce more cholesterol. And it will shoot up the triglycerides by 47%. And this extra fat in the body will find ways to accumulate on the artery walls, which is atherosclerosis, and this is going to lead to coronary artery disease. And so really the best step is eat your fats in a complex form. Eat the nuts. And because of the fact that they're concentrated, because of the fact that their oil is so easily becomes rancid, buy it in the shell, and that way it's a little bit harder to overeat on nuts. As a matter of fact, you'll find, I seem to find this in my experience, the higher the fat content of a nut, the harder it is to get into that nut. A Brazil nut, that's tough. You're not going to put that thing in your mouth and break it open. And then you take a macadamia nut, Dr. Thrash. I've lived in Hawaii, and those macadamia nuts, you got to break them open with a hammer. And you'll be tired before you overeat on macadamia nuts.
Well, it sounds as if that would be the ideal, to take your nuts in the shell in that way. Now, most of us, like myself, I'm not likely to buy nuts in the shell, except I have a pecan tree, so I'll have pecans in the shell. And sometimes I'll buy peanuts in the shell. I like that. But almonds, I always buy them shelled. But I want to be certain that they are whole. And I also want to be certain that they are this year's nuts and not last year's nuts. And you know, another way that you can tell that they are fresh nuts is if they have not been toasted. If you buy them raw and you toast them in your own oven, that's another way that you can tell that they are probably fresh. Because once they start to go over the hill, then the person is, the nut is likely to get toasted because then you can't tell so well that it's over the hill with its rancidity. So that's another thing that can protect you, but just always know that the more it has been broken or ground, the more likely it is to start having some rancidity. Now, Don Miller, I think, may also know something about cholesterol. Are there certain fats that will balance your fats inside your body?
Well, I've mentioned some of the cis fats, like the flax oil, like the walnuts. And of course, now you're going to find in the media today, they're telling you to eat a cold water fish, oil from a cold water fish. We find that these cis fats will lower cholesterol. But as I have learned over my years of study about the accumulation of toxins in fish, I'd rather not squeeze a fish and get its oil out. So I'll stay with the flax oil. But even the flax oil, it's going to be, the best is going to come in a dark container, completely opaque, and you store it in the refrigerator because, again, it is the heat. And that's where you talked about the heating of the nuts, toasting the nuts somewhere in the store somewhere. That has made it into more of a trans fat too.
So we want to do any kind of toasting that we do, we want it to be lightly done. Lightly
done and very, very lightly done. As a matter of fact, the way I sometimes do it, if I'm going to toast a nut, although, you know, a toasted nut's an acquired taste too. We get used to a toasted nut. When a raw nut is just as good, it's one of those wonderful foods you can eat raw. But I will take sometimes a hot air popcorn popper and put some nuts in there, and I'll turn it on, and when I hear the first crack, I stop it and dump them out. It's heated up just enough to start what it's doing is heating up the oil and the moisture content, just like a popcorn will explode because of the moisture content. A nut will just, you'll hear it crack once. The first one that cracks, it's out of there. Or put it on a tray about 200 degrees for a couple of hours. It'll toast it just right, but I don't toast up enough for a week. I toast up enough for right now.
Well, that's good, and I thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, there are so many things in our kitchens that will slow down this oxidation process. I'll just mention a few, like turmeric. Turmeric has that ability to cause some slowing down of the oxidation process, and so does pycnogenol and various phytosterols. Pycnogenol is from grapeseed, and many of the phytosterols are from things like apples and cherries and nuts and whole grains. And the emphasis should be on the whole grains. The already polished and nicely packaged white grains have lost most of their protective value so far as being able to slow down the aging process. Then olive oil. A lot of research is being done on olive oil today, and it's a much more, or olives, and they are much better at slowing down the aging process than we have known in the past. So we should take a bit of a moderate view on olive oil. It should not be heated high because that causes some serious problems with it. But if we are very careful about the way that we treat olive oil, a little bit of it can be used. Of course, no oil should be used in heavy quantities. Then I showed you the section of the brain. The brain itself is susceptible to gluten sensitivity. Now, gluten is present in rye and wheat and oats, and these are the so-called gluten grains and barley. And these grains can cause the susceptible person to have a sensitivity. And a brain sensitivity is a very common thing. And individuals may have various kinds of problems with the brain and with the nervous system because of a gluten sensitivity. There are other things that other manifestations of gluten sensitivity, such as an acne-like rash or a gastrointestinal problem. Now, here is one on guar gum, and there are some cautions on that. And if you use guar gum in your kitchen, you should probably check those out on the internet. And here's one on diazine and genistein, which are very high in soy, but also present in a number of other foods. And these are vegetarian foods, and these tend to slow down the aging process for bones. We're very happy to know that, because bones can become aged at a more rapid rate than other organs of the body, so we want to be able to slow down this aging process. So the vegetarian cuisine, even though it may not be as high in calcium as other cuisines might be, because of a host of other nutrients present in plants, we don't have any problem keeping a vegetarian woman with firm bones, especially if she will add to a good vegetarian routine also plenty of good exercise, good quality exercise. The lowly soybean, both the tiny little round ones that are usually used to express the oil, as well as the nice large greener ones, the soy limas, which taste so buttery and good. These are now under a great deal of research, and you may hear both positive and an occasional negative voice on soy. But to me, it seems that the negative voices on soy may have some kind of burr under their saddle that I don't quite understand, because some of the same things that they say, a lot of main research done well is saying the very opposite. Here is a very nice research paper that shows that it will lower the lipid content of the blood, and it will also improve the quality and the functioning of the lining cells of the arteries. Now, if you've studied this at all, you know that the lining cells of the arteries are key to many of the functions of the blood vessel, and also the key to many of the diseases of the blood vessels. So it's very important that we know about that. Now, we also know that in the vegetarian diet there may be a downside, because not a lot of B12 is present in the vegetarian diet. The person who is a vegetarian might become B12 deficient, so they need to check themselves for homocysteine, which can increase your risk of getting heart disease and Alzheimer's disease and cancer, and also methylmalonic acid, which is an evidence that you don't have enough B12. And if you do have low levels of B12, then this can be supplied by a pill. It isn't necessary for you to eat a dangerous food just because you have a low level of these. There's so much written today that helps us to know that the original diet that our Creator gave to us is still very much a protective diet. May the Lord bless you.